theory gets overwhelmed by complexity really, really fast. So without a compositional description of your graphs, graph-based approaches fall over. And I know this from painful experience, because we started, when we were doing relaxed transaction processing at MCC, back when I was working on Rosette, we tried a DAG-based approach. And with just 2 levels of dependencies, or 3 levels of dependencies, the thing would just fall over on its knees. So that was actually what prompted me to start looking at the process algebras, because you're not looking at just any old DAGs. You're looking at very specific DAGs, and you're looking at DAGs that wiggle and move and change. And so the process algebras account for all of that and give you a compositional approach to the DAGs and give you a way to tame the complexity. So that was actually what led me to the pi calculus, was the complexity problems that you find in a graph theoretic only based approach.
It's cool. It's an interesting insight, Greg. Very cool. I'm excited to see how it works though, because this is the first time I've seen it publicly in the wild, as a fully released thing. And I hope there's not going to be too many issues with it. I'm going to be really interested to see how the network is stabilized. I think that's probably one of the main things.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So let's see. It looks like this is mostly the usual folks. If people want to get the word out about the call, feel free to just let everyone else know that we're having the call. I just wanted to give a quick update. So I spoke this morning with the CoinFund guys, Jake and Alex. We had a great meeting. One of the things that they said point blank was that the reason they invested in Scenario, like when it was just a social network, they weren't interested. They said they'd been following Scenario for quite some time. And actually, that's what they told me in the summertime. But they weren't interested in funding Scenario until the RChain proposal. And they reiterated that position today. And actually, they said that, that I might not like what I wanted to hear, what they had to hear from me, but they said that they favored a reboot, just basically refund, and then they would shift all their money to RChain. That was their favorite solution. And that's the same sentiment that I've heard from many investors.
CoinFund had all their holdings in amps, right? So if they did a refund now, they would take a 33% cut, somewhere around there.
Somewhere around there, but that they said that they would prefer that over some of the other options that are on the table.
Yeah.
Now I don't think not every investor has that same viewpoint, but that's kind of what I feel is. I mean, I'm just reporting on their position.
Sure.
They are writing to the shareholders, drafting a letter today to express their position to the shareholders. And they reminded me, I had forgotten this, but they reminded me that they had done significant work for the investor that we were engaging in as a part of the due diligence. And that was, in fact, one of the reasons why the investor I've been talking to has been so bullish on RChain and the whole project, was precisely because
this is an investor, but a future investor.
So if you recall, we'd spoken about an investor who wants to put forward about $8 to $10 million, and as a part of the due diligence effort on his part, he wanted to make sure that he educated all of his partners on the crypto space, and then particularly on RChain. And one of the things that he asked, and I said, well, let me put you in touch with Jake and Alex, because they're also evaluating Scenario, and they're very smart about the crypto space. So that way you guys can do your due diligence together. It's a twofer, right? Kill two birds with one stone. And one of the things that Jake and Alex did with the other investor was to craft a legal framework to ensure that RChain met all of its deliverables. So a considerable amount of time and energy has gone into making sure that RChain has appropriate milestones and that funding is linked to milestones. And so this is, again, Scenario has been apprised of all this work for quite some time, and to the best of my knowledge, committed to this path of investment. So it saddens me that Scenario would back away from such a rich opportunity, especially since it dramatically increases the chance of success for Scenario and for its investors. But that doesn't mean that I won't pursue it, and I believe we have a path forward with RChain and the attention economy based on RChain, using building upon all the diligence and the work that was done.
That's good news.
Yeah.
That's excellent news. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to keep on the plan that I promised everyone. Additionally, I had a call with Vlad Zamfir, a Christian organized a call with Vlad Zamfir and ICO Countdown and Ian yesterday, and kind of went over the details of the the coin split, and I confess I've become more and more in favor of the coin split idea. I think there are some practical concerns that have to be nailed down, but I think all of those could be nailed down. So in particular, there needs to be a significant period for the market to express preference, because it would be easy for people to game the system in a short time, but in a longer period of time, it would be harder for the system to be gamed, and I think a clear signal of preferences would emerge. So based upon, go ahead.
So it'd be, by game you mean possible to to
manipulate the price of our coins and new amps.
Yeah, to do the normal pump and dump stuff, but since they'd be kind of inversely correlated more so than any other currency.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you could filter out a lot of gaming just by watching the signal long enough, right? So it would be easy to see what the actual signal is if you waited for, say, 2 or 3 or 4 months. And in that period of time, we could take let's say the Scenario proposal, and split the funds for that amount of time, just to keep both efforts going with the crowd sale funds, and then after that time use the market preference based signal to apportion the crowd sale funds.
Yeah.
And so that seems like a practical way forward. So again, let's just list them out. Door's proposal, as I tried to indicate, was kind of a recipe for failure for RChain, because basically it leaves room for only one developer on RChain, and there's a minimum of 4 developers needed to get RChain underway fast enough. Number 2, so I countered with a practical proposal. I think everyone who reviewed the proposal said it was too lean, but it was kind of in the area of workable, especially if we had additional investment waiting in the wings, right? So that was, and then I was willing to amend that proposal to shrink it down to 50-50. So it was about 2/3, 1/3 for RChain Scenario. That was my proposal, and then Door came back saying, well, that's like slightly more than 2/3, 1/3. And I said, fine, how about we go down to 50-50? Now, I want people to be aware of why I become uncomfortable below 50-50. And I think it's been expressed really quite clearly in investor preferences, because if we go below 50-50, and I have all these investors who come forward and said the only reason I invested was RChain, then I become legally liable for a bait and switch. Like, I'm personally legally on the hook for a lawsuit by investors saying, hey, you told me you were going to do this, and you're putting less than 50% of your funds on that. So that's why I feel like I don't have any more wiggle room.
Why
Like,
would
if
you
I-
be liable and not the scenario entity?
What's that?
Why would you personally be liable rather than scenario?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, scenario will be liable, but that will then come back to me, right? I mean, if scenario then goes into receivership and all kinds of other things, then I end up being, I don't have the same kinds of protections. And if the SEC goes after this, then I have zero protections. Then I become personally liable.
The notion of the corporate veil protecting officers, securities laws is one exception to that, where officers or promoters of something that someone could perceive as securities, and certainly scenario equity is like that. Then officers have a greater personal liability around that, or responsibility around that.
Right. So that's kind of the. So if anyone again, I'm only one guy, and I like to spend most of my time working on the tech, right? And I'm spending sort of extra time making sure that everyone is educated about what the issues are. So what would be really helpful is if other people could get the word out to the community, shareholders, and investors, and let people know what the actual issues are.
You mentioned that the CoinFund guys were writing to shareholders. Is there any way that, I mean, well, I guess we can't just like toss contact information out there and then say, hey, send your fan mail to the investors or to shareholders. Sorry, because I mean the community obviously has a lot of opinion on this, but they're kind of null opinions because the given shareholders can't receive them individually and hear everybody's case out.
Well, I think if their inboxes were flooded with messages that basically all said, go RChain or go home,
Yeah.
that would be a clear enough signal.
Mhm.
And I mean, Simon Dixon's email address is a matter of public record. It's simon@banktothefuture.com. And the same is true of all the NFX shareholders, right? I mean, it's gigi@nfx.com, right? I mean, it's not like these are not a matter of public record. I don't have email addresses for the iAngels folks, but again, you can find these with a simple Google search. Everyone knows Andy's email. It's andy@scenario.com. So if people want to email the shareholders and say, essentially express their preferences, whatever their preferences are. I'm happy to respect the community. I'm here to serve the community. But
Sure.
But if people want to express their preferences to the shareholders, so the shareholders have a clear signal, then I think that's the way to go.
Is there any chance that on Monday you'll be retained on the board and retained in scenario and be given the assurances that you want for funding?
So Jim, I'm not really one to predict the future, but what we can do is we can talk about the facts, right? So the facts on the ground are that if I received the letter of intent from David Otto, then Andy said he would shift in my direction and argue as forcefully as he could to move in that direction. I think that Andy's shift would be a signal to the other investors. Without Andy's shift, I think iAngels who have personal relationships with Door and NFX who have personal relationships with Door, they will vote in whatever direction Door votes. So that's sufficient. So if with Andy and those others, that's sufficient to outweigh my interest in the company. So there's that. I don't have an electronic copy of the bylaws of Scenario, so I'm going to have to go through those with a fine-tooth comb to see about the ability to call a shareholders meeting without a board resolution. But that's also something that needs to be looked into. And
you're not going to be present for the meeting, right?
Well, no one is going to be physically present. It's an online meeting.
Well, yeah, but it's, I mean, are you going to be in the meeting?
Yes, I plan to be in the meeting.
Okay.
I'm one of the largest shareholders, so it would actually be
Yeah.
corporate malfeasance to not call a shareholder meeting and not have me in the meeting. That would be.
I'd seen something about them trying to schedule a meeting intentionally at a time that you couldn't make it, but okay.
So let's see, where were we? Yeah, so that's hopefully that answers your question, Jim. I mean, I think that if the shareholders receive enough signal from the market, clear signal from the market, and there's clear argumentation, then there's then in a world that is that is just. The right action would be that they can't take me off the board, and they wouldn't go forward with that action. But as I said, we have to be sober and clear-eyed about this. That currently Door has the personal relationships with iAngels and NFX.
iAngels, NFX, and Andy, and in total they only need 14%, right, in order to get a majority vote.
That's correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's them's the facts on the ground. So I mean, please understand that I have been thinking this through for several weeks and realizing that was a possibility. So it's not like I'm going into this not knowing what the risks are. I've been very clear about what the risks are.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's.
Greg, without you involved, who is left on the scenario team? I mean, the scenario about webpage is inaccurate by many months. So who's on Door's team right now?
Yeah, so that's a great thing to notice, and I think it'd be really good to call this out with others. There's no. Can you guys hang on just 1 second? I'll be right back.
Yeah. I mean, from what I can see of the current team that Door has, doesn't look like there's anybody that's been there any length of time. I think Yaniv came on late September. I was pushed out right after the crowd sale.
And by the way, I mean, I think one of the things that's really important is that a lot of the people who left with respect to Door, it wasn't like I was in collusion with them or Door saw them as aligned with me. It's more just that Door hasn't been able to align with a lot of folks. That's been my experience. So to go through this very practically and in detail, Julia works for Acceptic, not Scenario. The Nirvanic team works for A4 Tech, not Scenario. So those are contractors, and they can't really be counted as a part of the Scenario team. And currently, we haven't signed a statement of work with A4 Tech, and I already told Subodh that unless or until these contract negotiations complete, we can't sign that SOW. So that team is actually not really on the project right now. So that really leaves just Julia, Henry, and Gary, and Yaniv. Yaniv doesn't actually understand the project. He certainly doesn't understand RChain, and doesn't actually understand much of the rest of the tech. So that leaves Henry and Gary. Henry is a great developer, and I really value Gary for his skepticism. But in the last several months, Gary really hasn't been able to do a lot of programming. Now, arguably, he could just say that's because the code base is too difficult to work with. But whether or not that's the case, he hasn't been able to do a lot of programming. So essentially, they're down, and you can just check by the commits, right? Just don't take my word for it. Go look at the commits in the code base. But also be aware that something like 40 or 50% of Henry's commits are actually my commits, where I've been driving and telling Henry what to do, but Henry is the one that's Henry is taking the commits, and I did that on purpose so that there was a greater degree of ownership and engagement with the code base. So that's something to really think about when you go look at the commits. So that's kind of, what we're really talking about is 1.5 developers versus me.
Yeah, they mentioned in the release earlier, I guess this morning, that I'm sure most of you saw that they're doing 6.5, as well as they're having, I guess, like family members or whatever come back and rejoin the project. Though I haven't seen if they're gonna say that that the RChain commitment isn't what they need. I haven't seen any other plans laid out, as an alternative, like as an alternative host to the application, or even a roadmap for development on the social app.
Yeah,
you think that they would have, at this, given what's going on.
So one thing that's possible. One thing that people need to be aware of is that I've been collaborating with Pyrofex, and Pyrofex is basically Mike Stay and Nash Foster, and they've been pursuing an additional commercialization of the ladle algorithm as a part of a much bigger play in the DevOps space. So they'll be converging on the crypto space and the smart contract space, but they're really focused. Their market is focused on the enterprise right now. So the potential for collaborating there is quite strong. And actually, Nash Foster approached me and he said that if we needed an interim CEO for RChain, that he would also be happy to help play in that role for some period of time, because they feel quite confident in the technology. I mean, they're confident enough to invest millions of dollars on the algorithm and the technology and opportunities that it opens. So again, there's considerable support for the RChain subcomponents and subtechnologies, and what I've been trying to do all along is to create a kind of rich and vibrant ecosystem of interrelated efforts that all support each other while being able to work independently.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning also that Vlad is interested in consulting on the project. I mean, he wrote this in his post about the coin split. If you read the bottom of his post, the disclosures. So I think that's a great vote of support from someone extremely well respected in the community.
Yeah. I mean, I feel so encouraged and happy about Vlad's engagement and involvement in RChain, and just the opportunity to work with Vlad on Casper is just I know Vlad is just brilliant. He's a great thinker, and he never lets anything faze him. Right? He just keeps plugging away, keeps making progress on the promises of Casper and the Ethereum stack as well, and so. To have him engaged, it's such a strong vote of support and such a strong vote of confidence. So,
he has fans in the Ethereum community too. He's a great guy in many ways.
So I confess that I am. Sitting with my domestic partner and was hoping to be able to spend a little time with her before I fly back from New York to Seattle after meeting with the CoinFund guys. And I just so I want to see if there are any burning questions, anything that really requires my attention and engagement, because otherwise I wouldn't mind spending just a few moments before I have to go get on a plane spending a few moments with my partner. But I'm here. I'm available for the community. And so if there's any burning questions, things that, you really like to hear from me.
I mean, just a topic I'd like to queue up for future. It seems like there's variants on Vlad's proposal for coin split that would make sense as well. For example, AMP holders could, a program could be devised such that AMP holders sent their AMPs to an address, or perhaps a provably unspendable address, and there would be a corresponding commitment to convert those control around those addresses to an RChain token in the future. So there's sort of these variants that could be explored. I don't know that all of them, and it'd be great to talk, I think, in the community at some point in more detail about Vlad's proposal and these variants.
Yeah, I think Vlad's gone through the arguments about making a choice versus making two independent coins, and he's pretty strongly in support of not making a choice, that they're just two independent coins, and then not having. He says that actually it's riskier to force investors into a choice. It's like, an AMP converts into two coins, so you split, right? And that's, and you can do whatever you want with both of those coins.
Well, what I'm saying is a little different. You're talking, if I understand his proposal, that is what will happen on RChain. What I'm saying is what can happen earlier on Omni is as a way for investors, without doing a refund, a way for investors to make their AMPs useful in the future is to, in essence, pledge them or buy a promise of what RChain will become by committing them to an address in some way, right? And so that can happen now as opposed to a conversion in the future, or it's kind of now and a conversion.
So let's be clear. Vlad's proposal, as I understand it right now, is that the coin split happens on the Omni layer right now.
Oh, okay, that was clear to me.
So there's an R coin and a new AMP that are issued on the Omni layer at at some point very shortly, and then investors get both. And then what we do is we watch trading on both coins over a period of, say, 2, 3, 4 months, something like that.
I see.
And prior to that, some initial portion of the funds is split down the middle for both projects, and then after that period, we do an analysis of the market preferences based upon the price over some period of time. And then we portion out the funds that way. Okay,
so that approach still requires sort of getting through that whole discussion with Scenario Limited. I'm proposing an approach that wouldn't necessarily need Scenario Limited's complete buy-in. Okay, no, that's good. I'll reread Vlad's. You enlightened me on some things about Vlad's proposal, and I'll reread it. Cool.
Thanks, Greg. Spend some time with your significant other.
Hello. Sorry, guys. I had Mike Stay call me and give me an update. Like Nash Foster wouldn't mind helping with some of the negotiations. So that's yeah. So again, I think we're. Well, I mean, just despite the sort of personal risk that I face, I feel really, really positive about all of this. I think investors had a wake-up call. I think investors began to engage at a level that heretofore they hadn't. I think that that this is practice for what's to come down the pipe, and this is the point I've been thinking about all night, and I really wanted to share with everyone, and then I really will sign off. I don't think that I haven't hidden my full agenda. I've put my agenda out there for everyone to see. My agenda is very simple. in my opinion, and in the opinion of many, many other people, well-respected scientists, mathematicians, environmentalists, we are facing a major problem in terms of climate change. And I share with many others, Patrick Byrne, as an example, the existing system for coordination. If we just view the existing capital system and the existing governmental infrastructure as just as a coordination device, that device is not going to get us to where we need to be in order to handle the global coordination problems facing us to address climate change. Climate change is a much, much bigger problem than we think it is. And we need tools to handle the kind of global coordination. I see the cryptocurrency as part of that global, a tool that helps address the global coordination problem. Additionally, I see the attention economy as another tool that helps address the global coordination problem. And I have been working on both of these tools as diligently as I can to provide the mechanism by which we will have the global coordination infrastructure in time in order to address the climate change issues that are coming down the pipe. And please rest assured that if you go look at the data, the kinds of coordination problems that we're dealing with right now in terms of just figuring out the budget for scenario is Mickey Mouse stuff by comparison to what we will be facing with climate change. This is actually all in the noise. And the reality is we are all in this together. So we have to be able to work together. And I don't mind working together in this messy, organic way because we're going to have to get used to it. This is effectively the new order that's coming down the pipe from my perspective and my point of view. And I'm very grateful that we're having this chance to practice these kinds of discussions because they're going to happen more and more and more as the heat gets turned up on the climate. So that's my agenda. That's why I'm here. My focus has been on developing and delivering these tools so that we as a culture have the ability to address the change that's coming. Now, I understand that is not always in alignment with the aims and goals of short-term speculators. However, I need the short-term speculators to recognize that it's stated very, very clearly in all the scenario documents that AMPs themselves should not be considered a speculation a vehicle. It's not a security. It's not something for this, right? It's utilized to unlock and enable features within the platform. On the other hand, I do believe that we can align both short-term and long-term goals. Right, that there does not need to be a lack of harmony between short-term and long-term goals, and it's perfectly reasonable for people, whatever strategies people are adopting, for them to be able to find lots of rich reward while still delivering on this path to providing coordination tools that will enable us to address the upcoming climate change problems and issues that we're facing. So I mean, I view everything that's gone on, despite the risk to me personally, as incredibly positive. This is a part of the general wake-up call that we're all going to be facing over the upcoming years. And I feel really honored to be able to work with all of you guys and to work with everyone in the community. It's a pleasure, it's an honor, and a privilege to be able to engage in this process and to be able to work on what I feel passionate about. So with that, I just want to say thanks.
That sounds like a rough draft to your presentation to the UN, Greg. And and I have a few pointers. If you'll just send me your first draft, I'd be happy to review.
Oh, thank you. I'll definitely do that.
I'm going to send you a message requesting any good papers that you know incorporate Curry Howard in finance. Oh
yeah. The biggest, the best one, and absolutely is Simon Peyton Jones's paper on contracts. So he was working. The long story, I can't go into it now. But there's a company called Lexify that coded up Simon Peyton Jones's papers on formalizing financial contracts.
He didn't just win the Nobel Prize, did he?
Not to the best of my knowledge. No, he works in computer science and mathematics. So unfortunately, you don't get a Nobel for that. You get Fields medals or Turing awards for maths and computing respectively. And Simon is a lauded and respected guy. He invented Haskell among other things. So he's definitely worth reading, right? And the papers on financial contracts are definitely worth reading.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, sure. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. You have a good one.
Later.
So.
Thanks, Greg. Bye.
So.
If it's okay with you guys, I'd like to end the recording now. We can just have a off the record chat. If that's okay.
Sure.
All right.